So we'll get started now. I guess I picked the perfect night for you guys to come out to this event. So I just want to say thank you for your commitment and coming in today. I know it was a bit of a trek. And I want to take this time to welcome you guys and thank you for coming to tonight's event and for seeing this exhibit that myself and a few others have been working on for the past little while. And I'll get into their acknowledgements in a while. But for those of you who don't know me, I'm Simone Wright, and Parting the Roots is my passion project. So the sole purpose of Parting the Roots is really to share the history, the significance, and the politics that is really surrounded with our hair. And it's a really important subject for me because I am the subject within the subject, just as many of you guys are here in this room as well. And within this exhibit, I only just scratched the surface of the history, so this is an opportunity for me to potentially continue on with this project. There's 2 seats here, guys. Come. Wow. So when it comes to my personal hair journey, it's been an interesting one, some filled with some positive and not so positive experiences, and especially when it comes to people's perception of me and their acceptance of me and my hair. And what really pushed me to do this project was a diversity training session that I was a part of at work on the topic of covering. So essentially, people hiding who they are or not bringing their whole self into the workplace. So examples would be individuals not disclosing what their religious beliefs are or what their sexual orientation is. And within covering, there's 4 aspects to it, and one of them is appearance. So the example that was used was a Black woman straightening her hair to hide her appearance. Now, that really struck a chord with me because there's many different reasons why Black women straighten their hair, just as there's many different reasons why someone who has blonde hair decides to dye it brown. But what was missing was the context behind our hair. And this is why I have this platform to discuss the history behind our hair and some of the issues that we deal with in regards to the fact that we need to straighten our hair because we like it that way, not necessarily hiding who we are. And during the panel conversation or panel discussion, we'll be having those conversations. So before we get started, there are a few people that I would like to thank and acknowledge, starting with Everton. Thank you for that. So thank you for encouraging me with pursuing this project and for enduring years of listening to me talk about my hair experiences and for everything that you contributed, as well as getting your car stuck this morning in your effort of trying to get me to the CBC building. And also thank you for coming up with the dope name Parting the Roots. Next, my main project manager and coordinator, Carly. You have been an advocate for this project from the time that I started to post facts about Black hair on my social media, and I really appreciate your support, your dedication to this project and your vision, and I'm looking forward to Parting the Roots 2.0. Everyone, all of the images that you see of me representing some prominent Black women and other individuals. Those images were taken by my good friend and curly-haired sister, Divya. She's also an amazing food blogger, so please follow her at Maple Chutney. Thank you for being a part of this journey with me. Another friend, Sarah, she's not physically here in this room. She has escaped this weather. She's on a beach vacation. She helped a lot with all of what you see within the exhibit. I also want to thank George Sully for coming up with the logo, Mixed Tricks, the hair company, for their donations. I also want to thank Jamie and team from Supply and Demand for the printouts, Queensley Appetite for the food, that you guys have here. And I also want to thank the Canadian Lesbian and Gay Archives for hosting us in this space. And in regards to the donations, I just want to remind people who have not donated yet, we do have a donation box by the food. We're donating the profits to two organizations, so the Sickle Cell Association of Ontario, reason being I live with the disease, and the second organization is Rainbow Railroad, and this is an organization that works with people within the LGBTQ community, predominantly within Black countries where they face persecution. So it's an opportunity to get those individuals into safer countries such as ours. And it's a great hybrid to honor the space that we're in. And it's also helping out the Black community. So right now, I am gonna pass the mic on to Carly. Actually, one more thing. Thank you, panelists, for being a part of this, but we will get into your introductions very shortly. Also to all my friends and family who have been promoting, pushing this project. Thank you to my mom who flew in here from Winnipeg. If you get a moment, introduce yourself to her. And yes, I'll pass it on to Carly for the land acknowledgements and to introduce the panelists.
So before I do that, I don't think that I don't want to start crying, so don't let me get too into how much I love Simone. But she didn't announce herself, so let's make sure we give it up for Simone. She has worked so hard. This is not year one of this vision. I've come on very late in the game. She's been working on this for a very long time. Started digitally and now it's moved into the real world, but she is a force to be reckoned with, and I'm very proud of her. So I'm going to start with the land acknowledgement. I'm not as great as Simone. I did not memorize it, so I'm going to be reading. So for those of you that are able and feel comfortable, I'd like to try something with you. Can you please stand if you were not born in Canada? Can you please stand if your parents were not born in Canada? Can you please stand if your grandparents were not born in Canada? All right, thanks. You guys can all be seated. So it's pretty amazing to see how many of us are new to Canada. Many of us in this room have just 3 generations here. With that in mind, I want to read the land acknowledgements. We want to acknowledge that the land we are gathered on today is the traditional territory of many First Nations, including the Mississaugas of the New Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and it is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also want to acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the New Credit, and the Williams Treaty, which is signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. We do a land acknowledgement today to honor the First People. By participating in this with us, we ask that you acknowledge the enduring presence of Indigenous peoples in this area. It is a small but essential step towards reconciliation and building a positive relationship with Indigenous peoples, something that we believe is the responsibility of all settlers. In particular, as we are in the Canadian Lesbian and Gay Archives, we want to acknowledge the Two-Spirit Indigenous folks that currently live and have lived on this land long before settlers arrived. For those that aren't aware, Two-Spirit was a term coined in 1990 in Winnipeg as a means of unifying the various gender identities and expressions and sexual orientations of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. The term is not a specific definition of gender or sexual orientation, but rather an umbrella term similar to LGBTQ. We also want to take this time to acknowledge the Canadian Lesbian and Gay Archives, the venue that we are in today. They have been amazing partners supporting this project and welcoming us with open arms, even with our very modest budget. In our fight to end anti-Black racism, it is important that we band together with others who have been historically marginalized and to recognize that the fact that there are queer folks within the Black community. We are so grateful to have the support of the Canadian Lesbian and Gay Archives. So now on to the panelist introductions. So I'm going to start at the far left with Greg. Greg Samba is a product manager and professional dancer. I have not failed. I have just found 10,000 ways that won't work. Greg has stayed true to Thomas Edison's famous quote over the course of his 9-year career. Thanks to his customer obsession, high velocity decision-making skill, and a constant awareness of external trends, he's built a strong experience in marketing, product, and project management. Thinking outside the box is second nature, allowing him to perform above expectations. When it comes to connecting with people, he's been living another passion as a professional dance teacher, and one of mine and Simone's. This has given him a chance to nurture his creativity and share an important part of his culture. Danielle McCoy is here, yeah. She is a freelance visual merchandiser and off-figure stylist. She also is a learning differences advocate and shares her experience living with dyslexia in the corporate world. She has a total of 15 years of fashion retail experience and has worked for powerhouses like Harry Rosen, Saks Fifth Avenue, Holt Renfrew, and has interned for BET. Next we have Tanya Turton. Tanya hails from Kingston, Jamaica, and was raised in Toronto. She's a creative entrepreneur and wellness educator. She currently works as the founder of Mia Zamar, Redefining Beauty Adornment Stories, and as an Art with Impact educator. Using arts, media, and education, Tanya is an advocate for wellness. Tanya is also a licensed hairstylist with 10 years of experience. And second to last, we have Moya Teklu. Moya is Policy Counsel at Legal Aid Ontario, LAO, where she is the acting lead of LAO's Racialized Community Strategies, RCS. Moya is also responsible for learning the development and implementation of LAO's service plan to deliver clinic law services to members of Ontario's Black communities. Moya has years of experience developing initiatives aimed at identifying and eliminating discrimination. She has developed and delivered anti-oppression, anti-racism, and cultural competency trainings to a number of organizations and agencies, including the Society of Adjudicators and Regulators, the National Judicial Institute, Ontario Court of Justice, the Environment and Land Tribunals of Ontario, Legal Aid Ontario, and Mount Sinai Hospital. And lastly, we have Simone Wright, our host and moderator for tonight. Simone is a businesswoman in the field of market research and insights. She is an activist bringing attention to Black histories, Black hair, and the Black identity in Canada, and enjoys taking cultural dance classes during her free time. Simone started Parting the Roots in 2017, and I just want to give her another bonus shout out because she was on Metro Morning with Matt Galloway this morning. And she did very well. She did so well that CBC Winnipeg reached out to us this afternoon, and so she's going to be on there on Friday. Simone, and you don't have to hear from me again.
All right. So let's get started with this open dialogue. So I just want to start off with thanking each and every one of you for doing this, because I know that talking about our hair can be a sensitive topic for some of us. So thank you for this. And with that, with Black hair, like, it's very important within our culture, and we invest a lot into it, whether if it's time, emotional energy, financial investment. This investment has been something that our ancestors have done. And our hair is also used as a tool for many different things in regards to communication, oppression, but more importantly, empowerment. So with that, the first question is, what does your hair mean to you? And since you're holding the mic, Moya?
Well, okay. You just got hold. I just have to hold it up. Okay. So, should we say how I came to join this panel?
Okay, absolutely.
Okay. So, Simone called me and said, Moya, do you mind being on this panel? And I said, like, I'm basically just a Black girl with hair. Do you want somebody else that is, actually, that this is their passion, their work? I recommended about 2 other people. And she said, no, I think it should be you. And I think that maybe sums up my relationship to my hair. I tolerate it. Sometimes it's like a child that doesn't listen to me, even though I do everything for it. I spend money on it, I wrap it, I say nice things to it, and it still will just do whatever the hell it wants. Although I also realize that, it is quite a political statement. I'm very lucky in the sense that my work is social justice focused. I have, for the last 10 years of my career, even though I am a lawyer, I've worked with social justice advocates, which means that I don't have to deal with the day-to-day indignities that a lot of other people who our lawyers have to deal with. Which means I can walk into work one day and have a bob, and the next day have a weave, and the next day this, and people will just allow me, and let me go on about my day and not touch it.
And you're lucky.
Yes, and I am lucky because I've heard stories where that's not the case. So, what does my hair mean to me? My hair is a form of expression. And I think as with the rest of me, as I get older, I'm in my 30s now, I'm learning to not just tolerate my hair, as I am learning not to just not tolerate the other parts of me that are not, don't conform to Western ideals. Like, I'm learning to not just tolerate my big East African forehead or my big East African thighs or, like any of those other things that I've been taught throughout my life that are not beautiful, that are not
Absolutely.
good enough, So I'm learning to celebrate those parts of myself. And what does my hair mean to me? It's me, it's who I am.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Danielle, you wanna?
Sure. Well, my hair, for me, it's temperamental, hence why I'm in Bantu knots. I've been in Bantu knots since January. Like, my hair right now is in this in-between stage where it's long, but it's not, and it has a mind of its own. I talk to it, just like you. I put a hair bonnet on it at night. I condition it. I put all these things like rose water and glycerin and stay away from alcohol and all these amazing things. And sometimes when I wake up in the morning, it's like, nope, we're not having it today. So for the past few weeks, it's been like this. And it's been working for me. So yes, temperamental, but at the same time too, I wouldn't have it any other way.
Awesome.
Bear with me, I'm healing my cough right now, so that might show up while I have this conversation with you tonight. My hair is sacred and divine. It's the way that I express who I am. My hair, I feel like for myself, hair is a really spiritual experience, and I feel like my spirit on the inside reflects itself as best as possible through my adornment practices, and part of that is my hair. But like other panelists have said, it also is challenging at times. My hair and I are really great friends. I wouldn't even say best friends. It's the kind of best friendship, and I know that y'all must have a friend like this, where sometimes you're really on it and you're kicking it and like it's fun and you're laughing, having a good time, and then other times it's silence, it's crickets, you don't hear anything, you're like, we still good. But then another moment comes up and you're just back on top of it again and you're like, oh, I'm feeling good, like this friendship is great. So I feel like it's one of those friendships where when we get together, we have a really good time, but we're not always together, and sometimes we just need to take a break from each other, and that's okay too. I feel like that sums up as best as possible my experience with my hair looks like.
Awesome.
I'm gonna keep it simple. For me, it's a little bit different because one, I'm not Canadian. I grew up in Africa, where everybody's black pretty much. That makes a difference when it comes to hair. What it means to me is that I had to fight my whole life with the expectation from not just myself, but also the people around me, like everybody here. But it means that those expectations were not based on discrimination. It was mostly based on what we reflect on the society. When you grow up, you're gonna get a job, you're gonna make money. If you do not wear your hair a certain way, you're not gonna make money. That's basically the message that you receive. So for me, I had to fight that idea my whole life, thinking, if I have cornrows, am I a good person? Or if I have my hair short, am I a better person? So today my hair is a motivation. I use this to tell myself, whatever my hair look like, I'm still the same person who can still deliver. So that's basically what I mean.
I'll chime in too, like, all of your responses the same as myself as well. It's my way of identifying with my ethnic background and for me to express who I am as a person. And I actually have named my hair Nina. Yes, so this is Nina. So when it comes to our hair, we're pretty much the only race on this planet with the texture that we have, and it does come in a variety of different curl patterns and textures. So with that, when did you guys first realize your hair was different from everybody else? Do you want to take that, Greg?
That one's gonna be quick. On TV. On TV, I think I was around 6. For the first time, my parents decided to have cable. This is Africa, people. You gotta remember. That's the context. So I'm watching MTV, I remember, and the first person I see, I think is Celine Dion. And I say to my mom, I'm like, how do you get your hair like that? and I remember having this conversation at school with some of my friends, where I would say, how do you get your hair like this? Like, so flat and thin. But it was more of like a funny subject more than anything. Until that one time where I actually saw a teacher that was actually a teacher from France with the same hair. So what I did, I touched her hair. So that's when I realized it was different. Yeah.
You want to take this?
Yeah, sure. So, when did I realize my hair was different? I think I didn't know that my hair was curly for the first 18 years of my life. I used to straighten it. I used to get it relaxed. I used to blow dry it as soon as I came in. My mom would blow dry it for me. I would wear it in braids. And so it wasn't until I was about 18 that I was like, oh, wait a minute. If I just leave it alone, it will do this. So for a very long time, I didn't know what my hair was. I used to press it. It was straight. It was relaxed. And it was like it wasn't like everybody else's, but it was as close to everybody else's as it could be. And then I went through I did the big chop or whatever at 18, and that's when I actually realized what it was or what it was capable of. So it was it was a long time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Wow, speaking of long time, I knew what my hair texture was at 27. I've been perming my hair since I was 5 or 6 years old. Yeah, long time. When you have a grandmother who's a hairdresser, she gets experimental, and my hair was, my mom, God bless her soul. She tried so hard with my hair, and my hair was long and it was thick. And my mom just kept putting it in she kept braiding my hair and braiding it and putting in these little plaits. And I will never forget, I think I was like in grade 5. And she had my hair in like 4 braids. And she's just like, don't take it out. Don't take it out. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna test the waters a bit. And as I got to school, I started taking out a little bit more, and it was out, it was free. I was like, yes, okay, I can be like the rest of everybody else. And then it started to rain. Yeah, everybody's like, yeah. It started to rain, and I needed a perm. So the curliness started to come in, and I tried to put it in one, and that wasn't working. And I was looking at everybody else, and I'm like, okay, yeah, this is different. Like, it was curly here and straight here, and it just wasn't right. And I think that's when it really dawned on me that, yeah, I'm a little different. And here's a little different, for sure.
I don't remember. Honestly, I don't recall the moment that I really thought about my hair as different. I have recollection of understanding my blackness, so I imagine somewhere in the mix of understanding that, but my hair was natural for most of my life, and then there were stints where I had a Jerry curl. There was a stint, I remember, but that didn't work out well for my hair. Y'all can imagine why. So with all of that to be said, most of the time my hair was natural, wasn't really something that I thought much about in the spectrum of thinking about beauty. I think I didn't really start thinking about it until, I didn't get a relaxer until my first year of undergrad. And it was because I thought it would make me more professional. So anywho, I feel like that's when I started, so that's when I started thinking about it. Prior to that, it wasn't really a thing. I went to high school and my hair was in a fro and I thought I was cute and I kept it pushing.
And for those of you who don't know what a relaxer or perm is, it's a chemical that is applied to our curly hair to straighten it. And a Jerry curl, just think of Michael Jackson from the Thriller video, essentially. So, understanding when you first realized when your hair was different, can you guys tell me when you first realized or experienced the politics behind your hair?
I feel like that's a challenging one because I feel like the politics of Black hair in general is something that sometimes we don't even know is happening, but it's happening. Because I feel like the experience of getting a Jerry curl was part of the politics of Black hair. I remember feeling like, oh, I have curly hair, which I liked, but it's a different kind of curl, and I remember enjoying that it was a different kind of curl, until it didn't work out. So I think that's part of the politics of Black hair. It's the beauty of being able to have choice and have so many options, but it's also the constant question of why do I like this, or why do I like that, or what does this mean, or what does that mean? I don't feel like, I didn't have the experience of it being imposed onto me, I think, in that way, because when I did get a relaxer, it was at the point where I had an agreement with my mother where it was like, you can do whatever you want with your hair as long as you're gonna book your own appointment and pay for it yourself. So it was an act of independence to be able to have choice with my hair. So I didn't feel like it was something imposed onto me. I felt like I got to choose, but at the same time I did feel like it was something imposed onto me because of other ideals around beauty that I had internalized and ingested at some point. So I don't feel like there was a particular moment that I can pinpoint, as much as I think that it's the stories that are told to us over and over again, and we don't always know it's being told to us, but it's definitely happening.
Whew, okay, where to begin? I mean, you and I have had these talks and so forth. Like I said, I pretty much didn't really know what the texture of my hair was till I was about 27, 28. I've been in the fashion industry since I was about, say, 17, 18 years old. So my hair has been pretty slick since there. And it was very long. And then when I came out of high school, I cut it all off because I was obsessed with Halle Berry. And seeing her short hair, I was like, yes, this is what I want. And when my hair was longer, I didn't really perm my hair that much. I'd say maybe 6 to 8 weeks. When my hair got shorter, and I say like really short, I was like, all right, I'm gonna perm it even more. So 6 to 8 weeks turned into every 3 weeks. And I was obsessed with having it straight, to the point where my mother literally thought I was crazy. I would put the perm in my hair, slick it down with a brush, slick it down. And then when I was gonna wash it out, oh boy, when I'd wash it out, I would brush my hair as I'm washing it to get it slick. That's how I was doing that for 4 years. Yeah. Very, very, very insane. And like I said, being in the fashion industry and being a woman of color in luxury retail, you have to have a certain type of hair. I will never forget when I worked at, I will not say, actually. Let me not say that. Woo! Let me not say that. But a very prominent retailer in Yorkdale Mall. I will say that. This was when I had slick hair. I think it was like 22, 23. And it was my first luxury job. And in the dress code, and this pretty much was for everybody across the board. It didn't matter if you were black, white, whoever. You had to have your hair in one. And if you had curly hair, you had to straighten it. You could not have curly hair and have it down. I didn't really think of anything of that. I'm like, okay, this is across the board. This is just not me. So it was fine. Then when I went natural and still went into, still pretty much working in luxury retail, started getting a little bit experimental with the hair. So wearing faux locks, coming in with Bantu knots and so forth. And the first time I tried faux locks, I was working at a very huge retailer, luxury at that, and walked into that establishment. Keep in mind, I was a visual supervisor for that company. And I walked in there, and the general manager of that store, I should say, came to me and was just like, oh, you had nothing to do with your weekend, huh? And I looked at him, I was like, what do you mean by that? He was like, your hair. You really had nothing to do. And I was just like, huh. And he walks away. And I'm like, okay. All right. And he was just like, yeah, your hair, the faux locks, like what is that? And I was like, oh, it's faux locks. I'm like, oh, okay. Walks away. So then I had my hair, I think I decided to put it up a few days after, because when you have faux locks and it was very tight, I had to have it down. And I really wanted to have it up, but it was too tight. So the next few days, I had it up in a kind of like a bun. And that same person comes to me and he's just like, yeah, I like your hair like that, up. And I'm like, why? He's like, it's not as distracting. And I'm like, really? Okay. Interesting. Kept it moving, so forth. Went to another luxury retailer, very prominent at that, and had my faux locks in. They didn't say anything, not one thing. I'd say I was rocking faux locks for maybe about 2 years, and then decided to rock my own hair. And I remember I was changing a mannequin, and I was bending down, and the VP of Canada, of that company, came to me and pulled my hair, and went like this. And I honestly thought like a wind. I thought some type of wind just caught me. I was like, yeah, there has to be a strong wind in here, because this person, I don't. Is there a shadow? Like, is there somebody really pulling my hair? So I turned around and he was just like, oh, you changed your hair? I'm like, yeah. And he was just like, oh. And he's still doing this. He's like, it's so bouncy. I'm like, okay, Janelle, you need a check. Just calm down. You need a check. Just calm down. You don't want to show that side. And I'm like, oh, thank you. And luckily for him, a few days later, he actually got fired. Not by me, but hey, karma. Karma. But that situation with him, my other boss told me that he liked my natural hair and didn't like the faux locks, because this hair makes me look more approachable. So I was just like, is this a compliment or like, what is this? So in my world, it's different. Some people appreciate it, some people look at it as a fashion statement, and then some people will have their little slick remarks. But I usually held my composure a few times, and with my boss, I had to pull him aside and be like, you know what you said was a little disrespectful. Like, what do you mean that I look more approachable with this hair? Like, thank you, because it's mine. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, too, I just wonder about people who actually have locks and what they have to go through and so forth. So, yeah.
And you think in fashion that it'd be a little bit more, you'd have more freedom.
Exactly.
To do what you want to do.
Yeah.
Moya, when did you first realize the politics behind your hair?
Well, I think your point earlier about the realization of our, coming into race consciousness being sort of intertwined with the realization of the politics of Black hair. So Here we go. We're sharing now, so you're all my friends. I have a vivid memory of I have vivid memories of one like putting towels on my head and pretending I had long hair. Not realizing, where that was coming from, so I don't let my niece watch Tangled or anything like that, and make sure she understands that her hair is beautiful and it's things like that. And I have one memory of being like a young child, probably too old to be doing this, but tanning with my white friends, and my mom being like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, we're all just catching some rays, Mom." We're all just tanning, and she was like, "You don't need to do that. Like, you're okay. Like, you have a tan. It's natural." So like, not realizing, like, coming into race consciousness took me a little while. But I told you I realized my hair was curly. I realized that I was kind of doing bad things to my scalp and the back of my neck with the hot comb and all those things. But the politics of black hair, to me, I remember one conversation I had with a friend of mine who was wearing weaves for a very long time, and then she shaved her head. And I said, "Oh my God, you look so beautiful. This is amazing. You look gorgeous." And she said, "Don't get it twisted. I just traded one box for another." So I took that to mean that, there are expectations that are assigned to the way that we wear our hair. There are messages, and there's a policing that happens regardless of what you do, right? So, "Oh, I like it when you don't wear weave," or "Oh, I like it when your hair is natural," or "Oh, I don't like it when you straighten it." Who cares? Leave me alone. I'm going to do whatever I want to do to my hair. So, the politics and the policing of black hair is very similar to the policing of just women's bodies in general. You're supposed to smile, you're supposed to be nice, you're not supposed to dress this way, or you're asking for this kind of attention. And so, for me, like, the coming into race consciousness was one thing, and then realizing that I don't want to live up to anybody's expectations of what I'm supposed to do or how I'm supposed to act as a woman, as a black woman, was a whole other thing, which is why now I'm like, fuck it. Sorry, pardon.
We're friends.
Miss Can.
Like, forget it. I'm just gonna do whatever I want to do. I'm gonna wear it this way. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that, and it's my choice, right? The thing is, though, you can't divorce those two. Like when you said the context was important. The context is important. So, if I have to realize that if I'm straightening my hair, if I'm weaving it, if I'm doing this and that to it, there is a history.
Yes.
As you've done, that's why we're here. There is a history, and there is an aspect of assimilation that is occurring when I'm doing that, and there is an aspiration to Western beauty ideals that I can't actually divorce from that. So I can't say, well, I'm just doing this because I want to, without acknowledging that we live in a world that holds up whiteness as a standard of beauty and long straight hair as a standard of beauty and blue eyes, so I can't, like, I'm conscious of it, and I'm making a conscious decision, but it's part of the same, so.
Absolutely. Well said.
For me, it's a little bit different. As a man, I don't think those conversations goes that deep, to be honest, whether you're talking to a black female man or somebody from another culture. But the first time I really, really paid attention to the politics was, I remember my last year of master in business school. In this school, this is in Paris, France, so in this school, what they do for the last year of master, they have a network of companies that they work with every year to basically make sure that when you graduate and get your degree, you get an opportunity somewhere in one of the best companies in France. And they have this forum that happens at the end of the year, just before you get your diploma or your degree. And we were in a room, and one of the main teacher came in, and he's like, guys, so the forum is tomorrow. What I'm gonna need you to do is to make sure that you come sharp, so everybody's dressed up just like it's an interview. And with people that have a problem with their hair, and he looked at me. Now, the problem with my hair back then was very simple. I was just growing my hair, because for the longest time I had short hair, very classic cut, and I was trying to have long hair. I wanted to do something different, so I was growing an afro. but it was not just there yet, so it was just an afro. And he said, with people with problems with their hair, please get a cut, but please come clean. And he kept looking at me. And this whole time I'm thinking, now what's the definition of a clean cut to you? Because you're not a black person, so I want you to explain to me what it means in your head, a clean cut. And I didn't get a chance to really talk to that person. And I regretted it for a few years until I actually had a retrospective on it and thought, in those cases, it's very easy, especially when in a space where you don't see a lot of people like you taking actions against that, it's very easy for you to feel dismissed and also just accept it as the way to go. So that's what I did. And at the time, I didn't have the knowledge or just the power to really reflect on myself and respond to that person. And I hope that next time something like this happens, I can actually do that.
Absolutely. And it's a good way for us to like instill and enforce this on our children if they experience this kind of stuff. Like for me personally, I did the whole t-shirt thing as a child as well. But I would say that my first time really experiencing the politics was when I first moved to Toronto, and this was when I first started to grow my hair natural because I relaxed my hair from the age of 9 to 22. And I decided when I moved to the city that I would embrace my natural hair. And I went to a networking event called First Fridays. I don't know if the older millennials remember First Fridays. But I went to this networking.
It's still going on.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm
You guys
an
don't
older
go out
millennial,
anymore.
so. But my friend Ruth and I, we went to one of the events. So this was probably back in 2002. And when I was wearing my hair in a little teeny weeny afro, and this was a black man who said this to me. He addressed me as Afro Puff. He said, listen, you're Afro Puff. Don't think that you're gonna find a job with your hair looking like that. So hearing that from a black person, and not even a white person, a black person, just shows like how we are conditioned to think that, you know, you can't get a good job with your hair in its natural state. So it's something that still exists. Absolutely. So the next question, I'm not going to attempt to sing the song, but in the famous words of Solange Knowles, don't touch my hair. Can you guys tell me when you had to apply boundaries when it comes to your hair?
Like you said at the beginning, I'm also a dancer, and I'm a teacher first, but I'm also a professional dancer, meaning I go for gigs, you know, TV gigs, stage gigs, whatever. And I remember doing an audition in Toronto. This is at the time I just came in Canada, so 2010, 2011. Back then I was part of a company called The Cast with OIP Dance Center. Please don't laugh. So I went to the audition, and I had long cornrows, super long cornrows going down. And I go to the audition and I'm thinking, they're probably gonna ask me to change my hair to do something different. But I didn't expect what would happen. So I go to the audition, I'm dancing because that's what I'm there for. And then they keep two people, me and somebody else who was not black. And they say, you're a strong dancer, but you know, we're also looking for a face. Fine, nothing wrong with that. So what else can you do with your hair? I said, well, my hair is long, so I can do whatever you want me to do. I can get to my hairstylist, you can change my style. No, but like now, like if we need to do something now, real quick, what can you do? Like be creative. So that was the next step. Be creative with what you look like. And I said, okay, so I can maybe like try to tie it up a little bit higher. He's like, no, that's not creative. And I said, well, okay, so give me a direction. And they said, well, maybe remove that side of your hair and let it free. I did. I removed this side of my cornrows. So imagine somebody with afro on one side and cornrows on the other side.
So creative.
And they said, I love it. and in my head, I was debating if I really wanted a gig at that point. But they didn't pick me anyway. They said that I was missing classical background, which is true, no, but in my head, I'm also thinking, but you kept me on the last two. And the last two were supposed to show something different with their hair. And that's where I thought, something's wrong. And I remember having that example as the way for me to see somebody else playing with my hair. They didn't touch it, but I felt kind of violated. So that's what I would say.
So I have two stories. One, I was speaking to a young law student. She was in her articles. So she, after law school, you're basically the most junior lawyer at a firm. And so she was out with a bunch of associates and partners. And she said a male senior associate or partner leaned across at this lunch that they were having and touched her hair and said, "Oh, your hair, it's so interesting." She said, I didn't know what to do except to go back and listen to a seat at the table over and over again. But what that highlighted to me was I couldn't imagine a scenario in which this, white male senior lawyer could even think of reaching across the table and stroking the hair of a white articling student. You could imagine how quickly every head at that table would turn and how quickly HR would get called, right? Because it's sexual, right? It's a sexual thing, but not when it's a black woman, right? When it's a black woman, it's a curiosity. It's like a zoo animal or something. And you feel violated, you feel like you're in an exhibit or something like that. So my second story is I went on vacation to Louisiana. I was in New Orleans. And I'm thinking there's a pretty big black population in New Orleans. This is not, but I guess they don't hang out in the French Quarter, which is where I was. So I remember the first time it happened, somebody, leaned over to touch my hair and I matrixed him, I just And then the second time it happened, it was a different person. So somebody reached over without asking, touched my hair. And I remember thinking as his hand is on my box braids, this perfect stranger, I remember thinking what am I gonna do? So I started touching his head. And I was like, can I touch your hair? I was like, well, okay, I guess we're doing this. This is happening right now. And it occurred to me after that, I was like, we need some sort of cognitive, some way to prepare all the black people that need to venture out into the world for these kinds of scenarios, so that we're always ready, just have it in our back pocket. It didn't work. He didn't realize how freaking weird it was that he was petting me, but at least I got to pet him back. So take that one. You guys can use it some other time.
Well, I kind of already explained my situations working in retail and so forth, and from the touching to the pulling, from me having my natural hair to the phone locks and so forth. But there was a situation one time, I think it was actually maybe last year or maybe 2017, and I will never forget it. It wasn't as bad because I remember I was in Shoppers Drug Mart, and there was this older white lady with her husband. She literally followed me around the store. So I'm like, do I have something? Is there something? What do I have of her? She's just literally following me. And then the thing about it is that I would look, and then she would kind of hide away. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? What do I have on my back? This is really weird. So I got to the cash. And she came to me and she had the biggest smile on her face and looking at my hair. I'm like, can I help you? And she's just like, honestly, I know this is really wrong. But can I touch your hair? And I'm like, you know what? She's older.
And she asked.
And she asked. And she asked. Like, she just, like, I've never had anyone ask before. And she's like, I'm so sorry. Like, your hair is beautiful. I just want to touch it. And I'm like, okay. And I literally like looked this, and she looks like there was like gold coming towards her. Like her eyes just opens up so bright, and her husband is literally laughing at the whole thing. And she's like touching it, and like literally like she was like, "What? How do you do this? Like it's so twisty. Like oh my god, and it smells so." And she got close, and she's like, "And it smells so good." And I'm like, "Yeah, I just use rose water and glycerin." That's it. She's like, "That's it." I'm like, "That's it. That's it." And she was just like, "Honestly, your hair's just beautiful." And she just walked away. That was it. And it was like, there was a part of me that was a little offended because I'm just like, okay, what is it about this that just makes people so like, because it's different? I don't know. But at the same time, too, I was just like, wow, thank you for asking.
Exactly.
Just thank you for asking and just appreciating it. It definitely was an eye-opener for sure.
Yeah. My story isn't as positive, and it's really fresh. So y'all are getting fresh stories. It just happened last week. Fresh. You haven't heard it yet.
Yeah.
Fresh.
Wow.
I was gonna tell you, but now I'm gonna tell you now. We have conversations like this often.
Yep.
So I was in Cuba last week, and actually was thinking it was a Cuba thing, and I was gonna go to New Orleans and not have this experience. I was planning to go for my birthday, but thank you for the game. Okay. So while my vacation was beautiful, and I was grateful to be there, beautiful beach, it was strange because I had never, and maybe Toronto spoils me a little bit. I don't know if it's just because of where I moved to the city. I had never had this experience anywhere else of kind of like what you had mentioned earlier around the ways in which being a Black woman intersects in this way, where it's not just the ways in which like women's bodies are seen as accessible. Often women's bodies are seen as accessible, but adding the experience of Blackness and the exotification of a woman's body, it literally is the experience of being in a petting zoo. And it's exotification that is seen as okay because it's a Black woman. Because nowhere in life would this ever be seen as okay anywhere else. And I give you that pretense as context of my experience of moving through this resort. So I'm like, I paid good money to be here, just like everybody else paid good money to be here. So I want to relax and I want to chill, I want to enjoy myself. And I, on multiple occasions, not once, not twice, multiple occasions, random people who I don't know at all, strangers, I'm waiting to get some coffee, someone comes up to me, starts touching my hair.
Wow.
Oh, what do I do? And I like what you said about having like a preset of like, what do we do in these moments? Because it's traumatic. This is trauma. It's trauma. Imagine anybody else coming up and touching any part of your body. We would never reach up to someone and like start playing with their boob. So why would you go and touch their hair? It doesn't even make any sense to my mind to think that someone would think that's okay. And I'm in a gift shop. Someone comes up to me, this drunk man particularly comes up to me and starts touching my hair. And I'm like, what is happening? So, and it put me in a situation where I'm on vacation trying to enjoy myself. And on multiple occasions, all I wanted to do is run back to my room. Because I literally did not know how to even interact. And I thought about doing the whole, maybe if I touch them back thing. But no, that doesn't actually register as, oh, this is a gross misconduct by me doing it back. That was my experience with it, at least. And then to add the layers to it, because if touching wasn't worse enough, folks started taking pictures of me. And they would try to like hide their cameras. Some of them didn't. It brings me back to the history of it, because it's very historical. It's very historical to put Black women on display and to touch them and to take pictures. It's very historical to treat us as if we're in a zoo. So to be in this space where I'm like, I paid the same amount of money y'all did. Like, we're in this space, everybody trying to have a vacation, but what it does, part of the trauma is to make my body feel like it doesn't deserve to be here. That it's any lesser in this space. any less deserving of this space, any less deserving of a relaxing vacation. So if taking pictures of me wasn't worse enough, because y'all thought the story couldn't get worse, right? The way that it excelled, actually, folks started coming up to me and asking if they could have pictures with me.
You should have started charging them.
Yeah.
You know what? Actually,
Don't touch my penny.
actually, by the end of my trip, that's where I was at, because I saw the Cuban women in the streets were taking money for it. Cuban women were like, okay, you want a picture with me? Pay me. So I was like, I'm gonna start charging $100 a head. If this is so interesting to you, then you must be willing to invest in how interesting it is to you. But all that to say that that experience was so traumatic. And this happened last week, so I'm still even processing it as I'm speaking to you about it right now. It was so traumatic because I kept asking myself, have folks never seen a black woman before? Like, I really, and I think that's a big part of the issue, because it's what folks are being taught. Because as I stood in lines, I saw particularly little white girls stare at me with this awe. And I thought to myself, I can't even be mad, because you probably have never seen anybody who looks like me. And then I think to myself, but then that's the role of parents to educate their children, to not have children who grow up to be adults and think that that's okay, because no one ever told them that it's not okay to touch anybody's body, regardless of that person's gender, regardless of that person's race. There is never a reason for you to go up to any single person and touch them without their consent. Never.
I'm feeling your trauma for you right now. Because, yeah, we do have these conversations from time to time. This is actually my hairstylist, so, yes. We have therapy sessions with each other. So I'm going to change course right now from our personal hair experiences and talk about how our hair is viewed in the media, mainstream. And I'm glad that you have the mic right now, because especially you being a hairstylist, there's a thin line when it comes to cultural appropriation and appreciation, and I know you work with like multiple clients. But this is a question for everyone. We see that our hair has become, I guess, if you want to say quote unquote whitewashed, or it's very mainstream. So I want your thoughts on what do you guys consider the difference between cultural appropriation versus appreciation?
That's a good question. I think about Black culture and I know we're specifically talking about hair today, but I feel like it's hard to talk about one thing without talking about everything, because it's so intermeshed. But I think about Black culture on a whole. Black culture on a whole, historically speaking, has constantly set trends, has constantly informed our understanding of music, our understanding of technology. Black culture on a whole is constantly propelling culture forward. It's a thing. Look it up if you don't believe me. And I feel like that transcends to our experiences of hair. And I think the difference between, at least for me, the difference between someone appropriating versus appreciation is the acknowledgement, is someone having the willingness to do their research. I mean, Google's free, y'all. Do their research. And to have an understanding of where it comes from. And I also think that for as long as humans have been alive, humans have shared things. I think that it's very real that we share things amongst each other. I think that a lot of what informs many different understandings of culture is things that is shared. Folks from different parts of the world bring things with them as we all immigrate and move throughout the world, and we bring aspects of our culture with us. And I feel like appreciation is when this is not specifically my hair, but it has to do with it. I think about like my one friend that like we're really close, and I use her as a constant example of like my one white friend that like really like does the thing really well for me. And I think about how appreciation for me is that I can bring my full self to the room, the fullness of my being, and I can share that with her. And she can be like, oh, this is something different from something I've ever experienced before, and acknowledge it. and it doesn't become hers because I shared it with her. Not because I said, hey, this is a thing that's really cool to me and I really love it. Hey, let me share this thing with you and I would like you to understand it because it's a part of me, but not because I said, hey, let me like share this aspect of me. Does it become something that she gets to take up and bring it with her, and now it becomes hers and she's like, well, my one black friend told me that I can do this now because, and I think that's the difference between appreciation and being able to acknowledge and see the wholeness of a person and love it and value it and be able to, if for whatever reason it does become something that moves forward in one's life, be able to constantly acknowledge where it came from and what the original source was.
Well, I'm gonna keep this very short and sweet because I mean, I looked at that picture right over there. And that alone is just a prime example of her. Her, yes. Like, it can't be more self-explanatory than that. So that basically, that's my answer. Right there, for sure.
I'll echo what you said, which is, the difference in terms of cultural appropriation is that you hear stories like yours of women rocking their natural hair to work and being told like that's not professional, or that's not clean looking, you need to go home and change it. And you get, when we do it, it's not allowed, and then somebody else does it, a white person does it or an Asian person does it, it's cool, it's avant-garde, it's cutting edge, they get celebrated for it. I think the other part is exactly what you said. There's it's separated from its culture. You hear, the Kardashians talking about, these are boxer braids. No, those are cornrows. Like, those are cornrows. They have a history. They're rooted in black culture. Like, you didn't make that up, right? Bo Derek didn't make that up. Like, it's been, So it's the difference between appropriation is an acknowledgement and it's a respect. And also it's allyship in saying like, I'm not gonna, until how people used to be like, until all gay people can get married, I'm not gonna get married. Like, you should be rocking those braids until it's okay for me to rock those braids, as an example. The other thing I want to say about this, and this is not directly related to the hair, but it is. So you mentioned earlier that I do cultural competence training, and so one of the things that we talk about is microaggressions. And so when I talk about microaggressions, I use the example of the compliment of, oh, you're so eloquent. And oftentimes when I use that, people will say, well, why is that an insult? Why is that a microaggression? I'm meaning it to be complimentary. It's a compliment, right? The subtext being, you're so eloquent for a black person. And so what I say to people when I do the cultural competence training is I say, look, my job is to educate you. My job is to tell you when something is going to have a negative impact on somebody. And I'm telling you that members of the black community that you mean to compliment are taking this as hurtful and offensive. What you do with this information is entirely up to you. But if you decide to continue to compliment people in this way, then you are a jerk. And in the same way, you may be doing this and that to your hair as a celebration of black culture. You can do whatever you want, but you still are gonna, you need to acknowledge that what you mean to do is flattery, is complimentary, is having a negative impact, and it's not being viewed in that way by the people who are owners of this cultural practice. So you can continue to do it if you want to. It's your prerogative, but it's going to make you,
I have a short answer as well. I think, to me, it goes back to education, like you said, and people have to do their own work. Honestly, when you think about it, anybody can do whatever kind of hairstyle they want to do. It's not forbidden. I don't think it's a rule somewhere. However, for any culture and race, I think it's a problem when somebody does something and is clowning whatever this thing is supposed to represent for a culture. So if you think about the do-rag, for example, I don't know how many people know what it is. Especially for black male, the do-rag is what you're gonna put on your hair to keep the shape of whatever hairstyle you have. For example, if you have waves in your hair, you wanna keep the wave throughout the night. As you're sleeping, you wanna put on the do-rag and keep the waves in it. It happens that some people, white or not, would actually put on the do-rag, without having any kind of hairstyle that needs to be maintained. Come out of their place with it, which some black people do because they want to keep the hair clean and remove it when it's due, but they just don't go out with the do-rag because they think it's cool. Now, if you wear the do-rag as a white person, one, you could be having a hairstyle that need that, but if you don't have a hairstyle that need that, it becomes clowny. And that's where my problem is. That's where the limit is to me.
Well, I think we have time for one more question. And this question is, how do you part your roots? So essentially, how do you celebrate your hair?
Super great. I have a commitment to myself to get my hair done every 2 weeks.
He's straight too.
I mean, that's the best thing I can do for myself. Know that I can play with it, do whatever I want with it, make sure that it's always fresh, feel good about it, and don't make it a subject. That's the way I see it. I don't have to talk about my hair when I go somewhere, because most people don't do that. And if it's different and you think it's nice, I will take the compliment and just move on to the next subject. I really believe that making something a subject can actually trigger some trauma with people that don't actually understand the trauma itself. So yeah, I try not to make it a subject, and for my own empowerment, I stay consistent at updating my hair and making sure it's fresh.
How do I celebrate my hair? I just take care of it. Like, I'm trying to take care of it. But I'm trying to take care of it by not burning it, by like not, putting chemicals on it, by wrapping it, by putting oils in it, by like, trimming it, by going to see somebody to take care of it for me. And I'm moving beyond tolerating it to like celebrating it. I'm trying to love my hair by, taking it to places, sort of like taking it to places. What I mean is, like wearing it in ways that kind of push against the status quo a little bit. So, wearing it in quote unquote business professional places in a way that may never have the halls may never have seen a hairstyle like that, and not trying to fit myself into a particular conception of what professional looks like. Mm-hmm. So I celebrate my hair by letting it be, right? By letting it be, by trying to make it as healthy as possible.
For me, I stay off YouTube. And and when I was on this natural hair journey, as I am right now, I should say, trying to figure out this 4C and all these other numbers and so forth, and then going on YouTube and seeing, oh yeah, if you do your hair like this, you get these curls, or you get this afro and so forth. And I'm like, yeah, if I go and buy more kinky curly, and I put it in my hair, and then tomorrow it's just gonna be amazing, or if I just use this. I was spending like hundreds of dollars every month, literally going to the beauty supply store, just like, take my money, because I want this curly hair. So it's very interesting, because when I was relaxing my hair, I was trying to straighten it to please others. When I started going natural, I felt that I was still trying to please somebody instead of just leaving it alone. Like, I went to an event a few years ago called the Natural Hair Fed that my friend puts on, and there was one woman that was there, and she was just like, honestly, use glycerin and rose water. And I looked at her and was like, there's no way. She's like, yeah, there is, because the majority of products have glycerin, and glycerin makes your hair shiny, and the rose water is just natural. And I'm like, I literally raised up my hand, I'm like, where do you get this? I'm going there today, like right now. When I went, I literally left, went to Healthy Planet, bought it, And that has been my routine for the past 2.5 years. And it's from just leaving it alone, just not worrying about having this curly hair. Like my hair is kinky. It's like this kinky, sometimes it curls, sometimes it doesn't. It has a mind of its own, but just learning to appreciate it. And you mentioned one thing about wearing it in professional settings. I work in Yorkville, like a little boutique in Yorkville. Sometimes I'm there, and sometimes I'm in Eaton Center. And when I first had my interview there, I had a turban on because I didn't know if they would appreciate it. And a few weeks after that, I took it out and just rocked an afro right in Yorkville. And nobody said anything. I'm like, yes, this is good, this is good. So then I got a little bit more experimental because like I said, my hair sometimes is temperamental, and since the beginning of January, I do not want to comb my hair. I don't want to do much to it. So I've been doing this, Bantu knots. And keeping it in for about a week and then changing it, doing it again. And I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna test the waters. Let's just see if I can do it. And I remember I had my hood on because it was cold and walked into Yorkville, into the establishment, and took off my hood. And my boss didn't say one thing. And this is a white woman who has been in the fashion industry for years, traveled to Milan, everywhere. And you would think that she would say something and didn't say a thing. And I had to really go up to her and be like, you know what? Thank you. And she was just like, why? And she was just like, the fact that you didn't say nothing. And she looked at me, she was just like, what do you mean say something? I'm like, exactly. What do you mean say something? Like, it's just hair. She was like, Janelle, all I care about is you do the mannequins. And as long as you do the mannequins good, that's all I care about. That is all I care about. You come on time, you do the mannequins good, you give us reviews, that's it. And I'm like, you know what? You need to be a spokeswoman for everybody. I'm gonna put you right in front, and you do that. And that was like the most amazing experience ever, for sure.
I feel like I'm gonna keep it short, but I say that now. I feel like for me, it's about having a really holistic experience. It's about allowing my hair to be sacred, but also be just hair and everything in between. So when I think about parting the roots, for me, it's allowing myself the freedom to just be, whatever it means that day. And honestly, I don't know what it will mean that day. Some days it means a head wrap, some days it means my fro, some days it means my hair is black, some days it means my hair is blonde, some days. And I never know. And it's intentional to allow myself freedom, and it's an act of freeing myself through my hair. Allows me to free myself in all the other ways that I'd like to be free. So I feel like the idea of parting the roots for me is the intentional act of being free.
Love that. Yeah, I definitely echo that, and as you can tell, this is how I celebrate my hair. Thank you. Thank you, Sandra. And I do have to say that I've been making more of a effort of celebrating my hair, because working in corporate for like the past decade, I always tried to make sure that my hair was in, I guess, more professional styles, even though it was natural. And even going in for job interviews, I was more stressed out about how my hair was gonna look than to actually prepare for the job interview itself. And I do have to say, yay, Coke, because my first interview there, I said, you know what, I'm gonna show up in my fro. And if they don't like that, then too bad for them. For both interviews, I went in rocking my fro. It's been 4 years later, so yeah, I'm always celebrating my hair. So I think that's it for the panel discussion. So thank you, everyone. How much time do we have for Q&A? Okay, so about 10 minutes for Q&A. So although we love your comments, due to the short time, if you guys can just ask questions, any kind of comments, you can come to me or you can add them at How Do You Part Your Roots on the cards there. So does anyone have any questions?
The people in Cuba, where were they from? Americans?
No. It's strange because the way that history, I learned a lot actually while I was in Cuba. I learned a lot about history, a lot. The way that history has set up, a lot of who are tourists in Cuba are people from Canada. It's a good portion. Like they talked about something like 1 million something people visit Cuba per year who's from Canada.
2.5.
Pardon?
2.5.
2.5. Yeah, no, it wasn't American, and they were likely Canadian. Many of them spoke French, so I'm gonna assume that they're from Quebec, but it's not true. Maybe they're not from Quebec, but they did speak French, and that was part of the thing. It was like trying to communicate, please don't touch me, to someone who doesn't understand what you're trying to say, and they said that's an invitation to touch you more.
Yes, Lois.
If there's one thing that each of us in this room can take away from tonight and do when we go out into our own world, what can you tell us to do?
Great question.
Ooh, that's a good question.
Don't touch.
I have the mic. Go ahead, but I think that's a great one, not touching. But I think that for me, my experience of being in Cuba, what I kept saying to my partner was that I felt like they didn't see my humanity. And I just wanted them to see me as human. I was like, oh, just see that I'm human just like you on vacation wanting to relax. And I think if there's anything, I think the whole concept of parting the roots is beautiful. I've been telling you this from day one, so you know how I feel. So I think that the idea of being mindful of the history and being mindful of our historical relations with different people based on the context of what might feel traumatic to that person. And we brought this up earlier, which I think was a really great point, was that it's important for us to really, whether we have that intention or not in any given interaction with another human being, to be mindful of what it could feel like. So if I could say for folks taking from the room, and I think that this applies to white folks, this applies to other POC folks, I think this applies to Black folks, is that in these moments that we move through the world, never be too busy to see someone's humanity.
Yeah, that's well said.
Very good point, definitely. I think one that really sticks out to me is that Black hair comes in all different types. Just because it may be a little curlier or something doesn't mean that we're all mixed. I get that a lot, not just from white people, but also from my own, where it's like, oh, okay, so your hair, it's not as kinky, it's a little curly and so forth. So yeah, you must be mixed with something. And I'm like, no, both of my parents are Jamaican. You're like, that's it? And I'm like, yeah, that's it. Like, in Jamaica, we have, out of many one people, there's different people there, different types and so forth. So I don't have to just say, yeah, I'm mixed with Asian and I'm a quarter white and my dad is mixed with German and so on and so on. I don't have to go down this line. I'm Black. My hair is who I am. Just because it's a certain type doesn't mean that I'm mixed or anything of that nature. We all have different types of hair, and I think that's really important for everybody, not just white or whoever.
I have a question. If you can go back to being 9 years old as a little girl, because I have a little girl, what advice would you give her now, knowing the information you have now? wanted to hear because she's here.
Where is she? She's looking at you like,
I'm not putting her on the spot.
you really have to ask me, huh?
Yeah.
'Cause I know you. This is your daughter, right?
That's my beautiful daughter,
What is her name?
Malaya.
Malaya. Beautiful name. Your hair is beautiful. It can do so many different things. It's many different textures. Embrace it and love it.
Yep.
More importantly than anything, love it.
One more question? Anyone?
So is there a hairstyle you won't do? Or do you feel free for every client that comes your way?
Was that for me?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. That's real. That's a really good question. Yes. I think I'm actually reading this book right now called Start With Why, and it's about holding our why at front and center for everything that we do in terms of developing and growing our businesses. And my business is Nia Zamar Redefining Beauty, and I started it as a space to be able to cultivate and support beauty, mind, body, soul. And my particular focus has always been Black women, Black femme identified folks. And I feel like it is part of my responsibility to educate folks who come my way. So when you say is there a hairstyle I won't do, I don't do relaxers, not because I think there's anything wrong with relaxers, but it's something I don't do. And it's from a very intentional space. It's something that I prefer not to. And when it comes to folks who enter the space and ask for different styles, it is a challenge that it's constantly a challenge to me actually, to have conversations with folks. So when white folks come into my space and want locks, they never usually get into my space. I usually refer out. But it's important to me to have that boundary. It's because I feel like, how do I create a sacred space? How do I make my chair a safe space if I'm not honoring what I say I'm gonna do all the time, regardless of who's sitting in my chair? And I'm not completely against folks wanting to have cornrow or braids or so on and so forth, but I also think that, going back to some conversation we had earlier, it's about having conversations and having understandings of why folks want to have particular styles, what is the intention, and then, and it's something I've done with clients before. I have had people come in and be like, oh, I want to have box braids. And the question is why? Why do you want box braids? What is the intention of having box braids? What do you want to see happen with your hair with this? And then how do we start to have a conversation about why that style doesn't per se fit, but what other styles could fit to give you the same experience that you want to have? Because I want to respect the fact that there's a particular reason why, whether it be for the health of your hair, whether it be because you want to experiment with your hair. I think that as going back to what I was saying earlier, like as human people, we want to experiment, we want to try new things, and it's possible to try new things in a way that isn't violent or traumatic for a whole group of people. Hope that answered your question.
Okay, so this is officially the end of the panel discussion, and again, I just want to thank each and every one of you for making it out in this weather. This is actually kind of worse than Winnipeg weather. But thank you for all of the love and the support. And right now we will be passing out the thank you gifts to the panelists. So we really appreciate your time, your effort, and your energy, and sharing your personal experiences with us. Because like I mentioned earlier, for some of us, it is a sensitive topic to discuss, and like you're bringing out your true feelings, and especially what happened to you in Cuba. Like I was feeling like what you were experiencing. So thank you for sharing. This is not the end of Part of the Roots. Stay tuned for what will be coming up next. But again, thank you so much for all the love and support.
Thank you, Simone.
Oh,
I
yes.
want to say, can we say thank you, Simone, real quick?
Oh. So one other thing, we have our little interactive section here, how do you part your roots? So share your story, share your experiences, your comments. And one other quick thing, in order for you guys to like walk around freely in the room to see the exhibit, can some of you just help with like pushing the chairs together or stacking them? Would totally appreciate it. And I believe there's still food there, some drinks. And again, thank you.